All right. My name is Matt Glover. Uh, I chose anger. Again, I think it's basically the whole gist of my paper, but at the same time, I wanted to go over some things that weren't really reflected in the paper. How is it fostered? So, just for myself, I feel like it was a thing that wasn't addressed for a long time or wasn't um, really taught how to deal with it. And so it was all raw and just, um, you know, however I felt best. Like I touch on just basketball, a lot of youth sports, and you have your positive outlets and you have your negative outlets. So some might go towards drugs or violence or a number of those sorts, where you can also go in a positive light where it's exercising, sports, even meditation or any of those positive yoga outlets, from a young age, and just being taught that I think is half the battle. Is just figuring out what works for you. The next one I have is genetics. Do genetics play a part? Just with not just your mom and dad, but even just like generational type situations. Having that, just the emotional makeup and your DNA and just being aware of that. I always think it's kind of funny when they ask you at the doctor if you have any history of mental illness or anything like that, but then as you get older, you start to figure out why they ask you that, or how that stuff can play a real part and is critical in pinpointing some of this stuff. So going into the next one, best ways of handling an angry person, whether it be customer service or an angry partner, teammate, family member, whatever it is. I think for myself, I try to make light of the situation, which sometimes goes awry and doesn't help, makes it worse. But just trying to show that it's not the end of the world and kind of diffusing it that way. Another way that I found helps is to ask a question or maybe try to change the topic for a minute, or just get their mind off of it. Sometimes I know for myself, like if I'm arguing about something or I'm upset and then it festers and it goes on and on, it gets to the point sometimes where you look back and you're like, what was I even upset about? And so I think that just kind of shows that if you are able to remove yourself temporarily, whether it be for a minute or an hour, then you're able to disconnect from it, and kind of take that emotion out of it, or take that emotional appeal to it, and just look at it logically. Temporary insanity. So, like people create performing acts or out of temporary insanity. I don't know if I fully believe in that. I think it's, well, I guess it could be situational based, but again, going back to genetics and looking back at the past rather than just maybe the last month or whatever the situation was, it might have been leading up from years of stress and anger and frustration that was built up, and it all came out at one point. So I guess that is something that could be a real thing. Events that you can't come back from. So, like PTSD, or like a lot of people that going off to war, or just like events for myself, seeing it firsthand, just experiencing death at a young age. And like for my mom, I felt like she never fully recovered from it. And so seeing that, and then going through this course and being able to reflect on it and really dive into it, I think that is something that takes time to come back from. I think it's a lot of it is predicated off of age as well. Not as much age as the willingness, and I think that's just something that it's all based on the individual. But it's some cases are going to be easier than other, but just seeing different things, especially in war situations, seeing different things and experiencing different things, I think that's a huge toll on the psyche. And it definitely alters your emotional DNA. But I think you can come back from that. Boiling point. So for myself, I see it a lot with our players, and just in sports, you can kind of see those guys where their mind, it almost seems like their focus is just completely gone. I think that might be the first sign of it, is seeing that their focus is elsewhere, and that they might be focused on one player on the other team rather than staying in the moment. It might just be driven to somebody in the crowd, whatever it is, or something that happened at the start of the game. So I feel like the first sign is their focus, and then their play sometimes can show it. Just being a little bit more physical, or whatever it is, making certain plays that they typically wouldn't make when they're calm, cool, and collected. So those two are big indicators in sports. I think outside of sports, you have just your heart starts racing, and your speech might you might start speaking a little bit louder, or getting a little bit more antsy. Your posture, you might start leaning into the conversation, and so I think noticing those signs will help being able to steer the conversation whichever way, either getting out of it, taking a walk, or just communicating that sign of, hey, I think you're getting upset, or I'm getting worked up. Can we revisit this maybe 5 minutes later? And so, I think that's a big thing with anger, and just it's through the course. I think the meditation has been a huge benefit, and just trying to figure out what works best for whoever it is half the battle. But once you understand it, it's just the consistency, staying with it. I think it's life-changing. So thank you.